Premiers took their Team Canada strategy to Washington last week, where they met with U.S. representatives and senators, but also officials from the Trump White House. It was an opportunity to outline their concerns about tariffs and, of course, make the case for Canada. For more on how that visit unfolded and where the provinces go from here, I'm joined by Yukon's Premier, Ranj Pillai. Nice to see you, Premier. Appreciate you making the time.
Good to see you, too.
I want to start with how we got this meeting, how you guys got this meeting, because you were pretty key to that happening. You met Donald Trump Jr. Is that how it started? And give me a little bit of that story.
Yeah, no problem. Look, we had met earlier in 2024. But I guess to set the stage, we were in the Council of Federation meeting in Toronto, being hosted by Premier Ford in mid-December. And at that time, it was the same morning that Chrystia Freeland resigned. We were actually in the middle of a briefing with three of our former Canadian ambassadors to the U.S. And in the middle of that conversation, already in a tense situation, the news came down. And I think everybody in the room have been around politics long enough to know that it was going to be, a substantial disruption. And so we broke for a minute, and, I walked over to somebody that I think highly of, and Canadians think highly of, Frank McKenna, and had a quick discussion. Said, Frank, I think I have an opportunity to maybe get in front of one of these folks in the family. Should I pursue that? And of course, his response was, yes, you should. Mm-hmm. So I out, and that led to a meeting a couple of days later, a sit down at least for about a half an hour in North Carolina the following weekend. And, we prepared. We sat down with Melanie Jolie's department to get the right data. I briefed up with our ambassador, our amazing ambassador, Kristen Hillman, before and debriefed after. So I in to try to send a message about really what was going to be the problems with tariffs.
And then that led to the Council of the Federation hiring someone who Donald Trump Jr. recommended, I guess, to get you in the door at that White House meeting. And tell me how that meeting went from your perspective, Premier, whether you thought you were being taken seriously and whether you think that the message you had is going to get passed on to the president.
Yeah, well, two things I want to clarify. Yeah. He was not someone that Donald Trump Jr. Said I met him while I was there, and we were asked by the Council of Federation and at the table, all of us, to reach out to governors, congresspeople, senators that we know. And at that point, it seemed like somebody that could be very effective in a time where, all the lobbyists in Washington are starting to push to try to get in the door. To the meeting, look, I've watched and listened to all the feedback over the last couple of days. And I think folks have to take into consideration, look, the King of Jordan was in the room in the White House the day before. That night, we had a release of an American prisoner. The next entire morning, the White House staff, as well as the president, were negotiating, I believe, with Putin is what had come out. And then when we walked in at 4:00 that day, Tulsi Gabbard, they were having a ceremony for her because of her confirmation. So the next day, Modi showed up. So I think Canadian premiers did a good job of getting in the room.
Getting on schedule,
I think it was absolutely effective. I watch, first two things I'd add. One, it was important to see what was said and what wasn't said. It was important to analyze the key people in the room and to, understand the mindset of those individuals. And look, I'm a fan of yours. I was getting off the plane from Washington. I watched that issue Thursday night. And one thing I'd say to pundits, you have to be aware of how that White House is structured. Sergio Gore is in charge of identifying 4,000 people, appointments, making sure they're incredibly loyal, and played a key role in the Republican National Convention. And James Blair really reports to Susie Wild, who's the chief of staff. The chief of staff, we were told, only goes into the room with the president. So you're sitting with somebody in the deputy chief of staff who's in charge of economic policy with their secretary, who hasn't been appointed yet, and played a key role as well in the entire election. So, really the only two people that weren't in the room at that point were the chief of staff and the president. So we had a chance to really get a sense of their position, how they're posturing, and again, what they were saying and what they weren't saying. So I think we all walked away with a better understanding. That may be not the understanding we wanted to have, but that is the reality we are in as a country right now.
Well, listen, that's all very good context. I appreciate you spelling it out like that, because I think there was a perception that maybe you didn't get the best meeting, but it sounds like you were talking to the right people, according to you. I wonder if you took anything away from the Deputy Chief of Staff's tweet or post on X later about the 51st state. Was that annoying to you? Did you think he was just trying to poke the bear? What did you think about that comment?
I know there was some feedback afterwards from the Deputy Chief saying, look, I appreciate the meeting. It was a good meeting. So I think that that's going to continue to happen. And we have to not get caught up in that. Not that we don't take it seriously, but not get distracted. Yeah. This is a significant time. I came away from the week knowing this administration wants to turn the U.S. government's approach on everything upside down. Strong remarks I'll make. I don't believe the administration is our friends, and I don't believe they're our enemy. But they are going to reset relationships with everybody in the world unless you're coming to the table with something they can't say no to. And I urge Canadians, I'm just going to, I watched, of course, the game last night. Look, we need Americans supporting us, because the majority of Americans are not in agreement with the positioning, I believe, of how the White House is approaching the relationship with Canada. And, I look at my own family. I've got members of my family that served in First World War, Second World War, in American uniforms, Canadians that moved to the U.S. for, jobs and economic reasons. We need Americans on our side, which they have always been our friends, but we have to be laser focused on how we are going to deal with this administration. And, you've seen some of my colleagues talk about how, Andrew used the word chilling, and, it was definitely a wake up call. We cannot be on our back.
Let me end with this, Premier. Are you still in touch with Donald Trump Jr.? Is this a relationship you're trying to keep up?
No, I haven't been. I mean, since then, at this particular time, I'm going to be continuing to work with premiers. I mean, look, he's an acquaintance. He's been very kind. He was very guarded when I met with him, to be open. I had a chance to present tariff information, but he, as he stated, look, I'm not part of the administration, but I think, look, it gave us an opportunity to provide some options for cough. I do want to say the premiers were fantastic. My colleagues, each and every one of them, rock solid together, strong comments. I'm not going to get into debriefing on the dialogue in detail, but everybody from coast to coast to coast was strong. And I know I appreciate the opportunity to come in and over the week talk about the fact that, look, the North is not for sale, to speak on behalf of Yukoners and to stand strong. And that's what we're going to have to do. But we're also, we are in a different time, and we cannot be sitting down as a country. All of us have to come together and understand what we're dealing with over the next couple of months.
Premier, you're a real straight shooter, and I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for speaking with us this morning. Appreciate it very much. Come back anytime.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, have a good day. I spoke with New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt about that deal making and whether the message is getting through to the president. Premier Holt, thank you for making time for us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, that pleasure's mine, Rosemary.
So tell me whether you think this visit was successful for the premiers and what you're sort of gauging in order to know whether it was successful.
That's a great question, because I think that we learned a lot of things that increase our odds of being successful in either reducing or eliminating these tariffs completely. We gained the kind of intelligence in terms of what the president might be thinking, what the people around him are responding to, as well as the kind of case that we heard from Republican senators and governors, and Congress people that demonstrate the pain points that we can leverage in the deal making that is to come.
The fact that you got a meeting with the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and the President's Director of Personnel, not quite the level maybe you would have been hoping for, but it got you in the door. What can you tell us about that meeting and whether you got the impression that what you told those people was going to actually get to the president?
Well, I think meeting the Deputy Chief of Staff, the person who is, the direct report of the President's Chief of Staff, one of only 5 of those kinds of senior officials who talks to the President every day, what he had to share with us, Mr. Blair, was very helpful. Getting that direct insight about what the President is thinking and saying, what he cares about in terms of a global trade reset, what he cares about in terms of preventing inflation and keeping prices down for Americans, was really helpful. And it also gave us a chance to share with him a bit more information about the landscape of critical minerals in Canada, about the kind of defense partners we have been for a long time and the opportunity to further those partnerships going forward. So I think there was good information exchanged and learned on both sides.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to help us in the case that we will continue to make to everyone around Trump, and particularly his Commerce Secretary, who's about to be confirmed, particularly some of those key governors and swing states whose voices will ring loud in the president's ear. And so I think we learned some things that give us a better chance at success.
The Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, said that there were frank discussions about the 51st state comments. We've heard the President repeat those comments since your meeting, and we saw the Deputy Chief of Staff tweet after you left, hey, we didn't tell them we weren't going ahead with this idea, because he clearly didn't want that message to go back to his boss, I would imagine. What did you hear about that threat, and how did you feel about how that conversation went on that issue?
Well, look, it was barely a conversation. I think that, Canadian premiers know and Canadians know that it's never going to happen. And I don't think we need to give it any more air than that, no matter how much Trump likes to bring it up. I think it's just part of his negotiating strategy. Destabilize the people that you're negotiating with. And I don't think we need to give it much more air when we're focused on an economic threat that needs to be addressed urgently. Canada is a sovereign, strong nation and will remain so with this team of premiers, certainly here in New Brunswick. And I think we're focused on getting to the real meat of things and demonstrating how the kind of tariffs that are being proposed are going to drive up inflation for Americans. They're going to increase prices at the grocery store for Americans. That's not what Donald Trump wants.
No, and yet he still keeps talking about it. And every time you wake up, there's a new threat of a new tariff on top of another tariff. So tell me whether you think these diplomatic efforts are actually helping at all, or whether you think this country, your province, other provinces, needs to start taking things in a more aggressive approach, whether that be counter tariffs, taking the stuff off the liquor shelves, whatever we decide, but whether we need to start being more aggressive.
Well, I think those things are being done. As you mentioned, counter tariffs have been on the table. Liquor has come off the shelves. But at the same time, we want the ultimate win, which is no tariffs. And the best way to do that is learn how the people you're negotiating with work, what matters to them, and put forward the right case. And so I think that so far we've been successful in the sense that we thought there was going to be tariffs on January 20th, and there weren't. And then we thought there was going to be tariffs on February 1st, and there weren't. We thought there was going to be tariffs of 25% on energy products. It's been reduced to 10% with a hypothetical. It still may not come to pass on May 4th or on March 4th or March 12th. So far, we've been successful in preventing these tariffs from being put in place. We've talked about retaliation. We've talked about taking action against the U.S. We've found other customers for things like our energy products, our minerals, our aluminum. So Canada is in a pretty powerful position. It may take some pain for the Americans to really see how integrated our economies are and how much the products that we sell to them, they add value to and that they sell to the world. But I'm confident that we're going to get to a place where these tariffs will be removed, if not maybe avoided altogether.
The former Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, behind closed doors at a gathering this week, said he also thought that Canada should be prepared to take some pain in order to defend our borders. Do you think there's some truth to that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, part of the strategy that we talked about included import tariffs that will hurt, right? These tariffs will hurt all of us. Certainly, we're going to see, if they go through, the amount of job loss in New Brunswick alone, as the most trade-exposed province in Canada, is massive. We have industry that's exceptionally concerned about the impact of these tariffs. They're going to hurt from the first day they're put in place for the Canadian economy, and we may have to sacrifice further for the ultimate objective of getting rid of the tariffs altogether. And so everything's on the table. We want the least amount of pain for the shortest tariff period, and ultimately the result of not having any. And we're trying to put together the best possible deal to work with somebody who lives in a deal-making mode. So I think that this trip to Washington actually gave us a lot of good armor to put a better deal together and have a higher chance of success.
Okay. Well, Premier Holt, I appreciate you giving us your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosemary.